All right, welcome back to the channel. It's your boy Fanon, and in this video, we're going to talk about something Floyd Mayweather Jr. said about Gervonta Tank Davis and Errol Spence Jr. Really kind of taken back from it, but if it is true, wow. Let's talk about that in this video. All right, welcome back to the channel. It's your boy Fanon, and in this video, we're going to talk about the 135-pound and the 147-pound division, specifically what Floyd Mayweather Jr. had to say about Gervonta Tank Davis and what it means for Errol Spence Jr. But before I get into that, let me welcome you back to the channel. If you guys are new to the channel, thank you so much for checking out the video. Make sure that you hit that subscribe button, hit that bell icon so you can be notified of when we release more videos. If you are a longtime subscriber and supporter to the channel, thank you so much for continuing to check the channel out. Please make sure you hit that like button and the share button, help grow the channel. All right, so Floyd Mayweather Jr. said something real funny in a interview with Fight Hype when he was talking about the Ryan Garcia versus Gervonta Tank Davis fight and him saying that he wants to make that fight, right? Now, as everybody knows, Gervonta Davis and Ryan Garcia have been in a back and forth about making a fight between the two of them. And it is, according to what most people say, one of the biggest fights that can be made in boxing. Now, there's another very big fight that people have been talking about, obviously, and that is the fight between Errol Spence Jr. and Terrence Crawford for the undisputed title at 147 pounds. Now, I had always assumed that people all pretty much believe that the Errol Spence Jr. and the Terrence Crawford fight is the biggest fight in boxing, right? There were other fights I do believe at times they could have been bigger, or guys in the sport that some people say have a bigger name, like Canelo Alvarez, or maybe the year before last, Anthony Joshua. Tyson Fury had a real big fight over there in the UK, but pretty much the way that things are panning out in boxing, I would suspect that the biggest fight that you can make right now is the Errol Spence Terrence Crawford fight, right? Not according to Floyd Mayweather Jr., who in this conversation referred to Gervonta Davis as the biggest name in boxing and saying that he was the biggest star in boxing. Now, I been talking about this with people for a while, and I have never been somebody to believe, just what is just out there in the press if it doesn't make sense, right? So people have been saying for a while that Canelo Alvarez is the biggest name in boxing. I still maintain that is probably the truth. He probably has the highest single, the largest single fan base of any particular fighter. But at the same time, there's not a lot out there to prove that that's the case, because Canelo Alvarez over the last 4 years or so has been, or ever since the HBO ceased operations have been pretty much stuck on an app, so you really don't know what his visibility has been. What you could go off of, however, is the gate, and his gates are typically very, very big, right? Except for in this last particular fight where he fought Dimitri Bivol, and it took a big slide. However, maybe what Floyd was talking about was in American boxing, and even in that case, I think to myself, well, really, who's the bigger name fighter between him and Errol Spence Jr.? Right, between he being Gervonta Davis and Errol Spence Jr. And that is a more interesting conversation, and one that people could say, I don't really know. Because if you look at what Errol has done, Errol has had the larger pay-per-view buys, at least what's been reported. And as we know, what's reported is not very accurate, because the actual organizations that give those numbers out do not share those numbers, the actual numbers, with anybody, right? Showtime is not telling people what the pay-per-view numbers are. It's media people with sources, inside sources, telling them or estimating what they believe it looks like that fight is going to come out to be, right? And those numbers are always, for PBC, strangely enough, always around the same. So I'm like, there's not a lot of variety. It's always 250, 300, with Manny Pacquiao, they got up to, I think they got up to 600,000 with Manny Pacquiao and Keith Thurman. The only one that was rumored to be very high was the Canelo Alvarez versus Caleb Plant, which was rumored to be around 800,000, right? But this last one for Canelo Alvarez was at 130,000, according to Leonard Ellerby, for cable-based sales in the United States. So it's really hard to go off those pay-per-view numbers. But if you go off the gates, right, then you would say, well, okay, Errol Spence Jr. had the larger gate, but Errol's fighting in Dallas, Texas, right, where it's just his hometown. It's a big stadium. While at the same time, you have Gervonta, who is selling out stadiums all over the country, right? Selling them out in Atlanta, selling out in Baltimore, obviously, in New York, in LA, right, in Texas. So it's just, the question of who is the bigger fighter between the two of those guys may very well be up for question, right? But the funny thing is, though, that really what that tells you with the number that these guys have is that boxing is really kind of fallen off to the extent that you really have a lot of really big stars right now. You kind of don't, man. You have, Deontay Wilder, who should be coming back and fighting again, and he always does excellent numbers, despite what a lot of other people over there in the UK want to say when they want to tear that dude's name down, so they don't have to fight. So Anthony Joshua doesn't have to fight him. But just all in all, man, it's just a little bit less, fewer big names in the sport. And I think that has a lot to do with the fact that you have all of these different networks, and there's not necessarily, a lot of really good fights being made. And the fact that you have, like, for example, Matchroom Boxing killing the Deontay Wilder versus Anthony Joshua fight. You've got, the Gervonta Davis and Ryan Garcia fight split between, DAZN and HBO. And now you just, after all these years, get the Errol Spence Jr. and Terrence Crawford fight, where these guys can get into the ring with each other, which I do think is going to be a big boost for the sport. But hopefully this stuff will change, man, and there'll be a lot more, a lot more mega fights, because those do really add a lot of excitement to the game. A lot of boxing conversation goes on around them. And when that happens, you have the names of other young fighters brought up in, comparing them to the fighters that already have the big name. And I think it's just good all the way around. But as far as what Floyd Mayweather Jr. said about Gervonta Davis being the biggest name in boxing, nah, dude, I think you might be overselling it just a little bit. However, I will tell you that I definitely think he's top 4, right, along with with Canelo Alvarez, Errol Spence Jr., then probably maybe Gervonta after that. I'm not a big believer in what's going on with Tyson Fury over there in the UK. I just don't know about that. It seems like that's a lot of hoopla around him, but that's like more of a marketing thing with him, even though he did have what looked like to be a really big fight with Dillian White. But anyway, that's my take on the matter. You let me know what you think in the comment section. And with that, I'm out. Deuces.